Well, welcome back to Gardener's Cottage here on the North Norfolk coast, and we're into hollyhock season. Just look at these beauties just at the front door here at Gardener's, just coming to their very peak. First lower flowers opening up. Beautiful pair of red flowered hollyhocks here for you, but we've got plenty more in this garden. If I just scan round, been such a nice lush and wet year here this year. Yellow Lysimachia or yellow loosestripes really got a hold here on the what is an east-facing border just to the gravel pathway that runs up the front of Gardener's. But let's go into the main garden, have a look, see how else the garden is doing this year. Well, I'm a big fan of wildflower gardening, and feverfew is one of the flowers that pops up all over the place here, and this is a particularly nice little variety which is a creamy yellowy white. Normally feverfew is a much darker centre than this with a daisy-like flower, but we're going to try and propagate some seed off this later in the season. This is such a little stunner, flowering really nicely here in the shade under one of the bigger roses. Big example that's now finished flowering, Philadelphus, and the rose is a rambling rector, so quite heavy shade for it, but it's still lost its bright yellow foliage of the early season, but the flowers are just stunning. Really do enjoy that little one, and hopefully it will propagate nicely. No sign of any seedlings in the gravel underneath it, which is where we'd normally expect seeds to fall. Little Aquilegia just coming up there, if you can see, which will probably lead in. See how that does. Well, last season it was so dry and not a great year for Japanese anemones, but just look at this crop of buds. This is a little area again just at the head of that driveway. They're growing through gravel here. They were in the border just behind. You see that little concrete edge, which is the old border demarcation. They were planted in the land behind. They became completely overshadowed by a combination of shrubs. We've got a buddleia, a flowering currant, and there was a massive great rose in here. And the tree canopy above that's been reduced really meant this was a very dry and shady area. So Japanese anemones have done what they do, run by root cuttings out into the gravel area to get some light, and this year they're doing really beautifully. It looks like those are going to flower fantastically, particularly with this moist weather. Again, lots of things in this garden doing far better this season than would otherwise be the case. This new border, or reclaim border, it's not really new at all. It's probably very poor soil in here, but we have top dressed it with compost and planted quite a few things out into it this year. A lot of weed seedlings coming up as well that are going to need a little bit of attention later in the year. But we've got some catmints established, some iris, blocks of chives. This white autumn flowering daisy looks as if it's going to do very well, and just the start of a flower from the verbena just getting going in there. Loads of seedlings from that coming out of the Mid-Norfolk farm garden, where it seeded profusely last year. Got Lysimachia. We've got, I think that's a tree peony that's probably just a seedling that's come up. Did see that when I was clearing it. It got broken off, but it's coming back up. Apple mint, more of that feverfew. Now that's a typical feverfew flower. You can see the yellow daisy centre with the white, which is why I'm so keen on getting some seed off that white double. But they're doing really well in here, and it's looking very lush. Again, helped by the amount of rain that we've had. No Mow May turned into No Mow June, and the profusion of this oxeye daisy, which has just been so spectacular right across Norfolk this year, has meant that this little area of lawn got left for the guests to enjoy. Look at that little bugle. Just it's amazing what happens in a lawn if you don't cut it and just allow the naturalised flowers to come up in it. Doing really well, and there's plenty of little cyclamen coming up in there as well, and some primrose. Just look at that. Again, always surprises you just what is hiding away, waiting for the opportunity to do its thing. And talking of that, the dry bank under this tree canopy at the back, usually we don't have anything flowering on that this time of year, but again, look, Lysimachia this year's been wet enough, and we are starting to reduce the hedge at the back. We do that periodically about every 3 or 4 years to try and let some light through. rest of the garden looking sort of latest season now. First flush of roses in June's just about over now, but floribundas are still coming into flower along the front, and the buddleias flowering beautifully, just a self-seeded buddleia. Again, these come up all over the gravel courtyards, and if they're in the right place we do try and leave the occasional one for the butterflies, which just aren't here this year yet. Too wet, too cold, maybe later. Quite often they surprise you and come later in the season, but they're missing out on this nectar right now on the buddleias, which would normally be awash with them. Back of the cottage looking much smarter now. It's had a lick of paint over the early summer. Barge boards and the render all painted, and that was a job and a half, but it's looking much tidier back here in the courtyard garden, with the seating area and barbecue all ready for guests to enjoy over this summer holiday season. So I'm going to crack on with a few more jobs, get this cottage ready for letting. Got the first week's let for the holiday season coming up this afternoon, starting from 4 p.m, and I hope they have a marvellous time here and that the weather improves and feels a little bit more like a summer holiday than an autumn half term, which is what we've got at the moment. Thanks for watching.